Welcome everyone. Here today to talk about the article critique for MKTG 7001, Semester 1, 2015. Okay, so let's see what it's all about. So the details, as I said before, are always very important with anything to do with the course. So what you need to do for this item is pick one of the articles from the list of 20 available online. They should all be up there with links provided. No other articles are allowed, so please don't ask, and I mean that, and I really do mean that. So it is worth 20% and is due in at 8:59 a.m. on April 23, so just after you've had the break, it's due in. Word count of 1,500 to 2,000 words, so plus or minus 10%. 1,500 is what the bare minimum you should be writing. Anything less than that, and I start getting worried about what you've done and how you've done it. It is individual only, no group work allowed on this item of assessment. Okay, marking. Now the marking guide is very self-explanatory. It's all contained in the rubric. But let's run over each item right now. So firstly, the research problem itself. So with the articles you select, have they clearly identified the research problem? Is it significant? Have they really specified how it is significant? Or have they just ignored that fact at all? Have they made it both a practical and a theoretical issue, or does it relate to only one and not the other? What variables do they talk about as being important for their study? Do they identify them early on, or do they sort of build up to it? What's their approach? The literature review. Now, most articles will contain a literature review, so here what you need to be looking at with the article is what concepts or theories are included in the review of the literature. Is there something they've particularly focused on more than something else, and how they're defined, in what context do they define them perhaps? Does the researcher adequately identify gaps in the knowledge which the study aims to address? In other words, have they said, hey, this is a gap between what theory says and what practice does? So it might be something as simple as that. It could be theory only, or could be just practice only. So your objective here is to identify, see if they have identified those gaps. And third part of this item is to look at the literature review and see if it makes relationships among variables explicit or place the variables within a theoretical framework. Some papers, for example, might talk about a model. So here you might want to look at that and see what variables they have identified and then how they place them in a framework of explaining the problem they may have identified just before. The hypotheses or research questions, they should have one. What you need to look at is identify what they are. So just a clear statement of what the researchers have said are the main research questions they're trying to answer, or the hypotheses which are built around a research question. So do all of that. Are they clearly stated? Can they be tested? So are they measurable, or are they just maybe just a concept at this stage, which will await further development? So look into this. And what relationship among variables are hypothesized or predicted? So are they making a prediction early on about what they think could be happening already? So the research design, in the paper they'll talk about the research design. What type of research methods are used in the study? So is there anything in here they've talked about as being a good research design or good method to test what they've discussed? What is the unit of analysis, or units? Maybe they've done use different variables or multiple variables with different ways of measuring each one. You need to look at to see what they've done there. Who are the participants? Where did they choose them from? And what are the sample procedures they used otherwise? Does the design and of the research method themselves flow from the proposed research problem, the literature review, research question, or hypotheses? In other words, are they really following on from what they've said earlier on in the paper? So look into that as well. And to what population may the findings be generalized? In other words, are they applying this specifically to one group or across the entire population in a country or region or consumer situation? And do you think they've measured the variables adequately? So do you think they've done a good job? So do you think they in their own heads have identified whether they've done a good job or not? So it's good to look into that as well. Okay, so the last part on the marking rubric is discussion, conclusions, and implications. It's always the fun bit to read in a journal paper, because it's usually the bit where authors like to write this the most, because it's really where they make the analysis happen and bring the paper to life, as it were. So are the results interpreted in the context of the research problem and hypotheses and the framework itself they talked about earlier? Maybe they tested their model and they think this model is now good enough to be applied across the entire population, and this is where they might discuss that fact. What generalizations are made? Are these adequate and why? So do you think they've talked about anything which is applied to a general population or sample? And what do you think of these? What are the implications of the results management practice? So in other words, do you think in this case they can apply these things into a marketing management perspective? Can a marketing manager on the ground apply these findings tomorrow to what they do, or really are they too hard and maybe more subject of academic debate further down the track? Okay, so the second last point to look at, are they other ways the results could have been interpreted? Do you think they could have done it differently, for example? So analyze that yourself. This is all about critical thinking. This item is really going to test your critical thinking skills and really show me who the good people are in the room when it comes to critical thinking, and those people who maybe need to do some more work on this, on their critical thinking skills. So look at the results of the study. Are they an artifact of the research design and research methods? In other words, is the research method constraining them perhaps to find results in a certain area or a certain way? What do you think of that? Yes, no. So go into a bit more depth in this area. And how can the study itself be improved? So in other words, what do you think is the main ways the study can be improved? Okay, on to the last item to really put your paper in context itself is always presentation. It's always important with all items of assessment, so make sure you follow the guidelines which I've specified in the marketing plan for presentations, presentation of assessment, and all should be well. But always remember too, this, as I said before, this item is testing your critical thinking. The word count and how you distribute it is up to you. You might find yourself writing more or less for one area compared to other people. So my advice to you is don't compare yourself to others. Don't look for what you think is the hardest article out of the lot to do, because that gets higher marks for degree of difficulty. They do not. All papers are weighted the same and are treated the same. So choose the one you have the most enjoyment in writing about. That's my advice to you on this item. Okay, if you've had any other questions about this item, please contact me and hopefully I can answer your questions. Again, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. All right, bye-bye for now.